How do you like yourself some F1? That was chaos, ladies and gentlemen of the F1 jury. The Singapore Grand Prix is in the books, and overall your headline is George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk, dominant. If there is a dude after Maximilian Verstappen that can challenge Maximilian Verstappen for some say soon to be a 5-time champion, then he has a name, and his name is King George Russell. Nails Singapore in the way that he hasn't done career to date. Again, we expected mistakes. He always yeets it into the barrier during the race, as well as FP. He did it in free practice, nothing doing in the race though. He was as near as makes no difference, perfect. Of course, the W16 had its Weetabix this morning, but put some respect on King George Russell's name. Quicker than quick things that dude was all race weekend. I mean, if you beat Max Verstappen in qualifying, notwithstanding Lando and Norris's indiscretions to the tune of 1.5 tenths, then we should put some respect on that dude's name. Love him or loathe him, I understand people don't like him. Colt RH will never admit how good George Russell is because of their interactions. Sir Lewis didn't fare well with King George. A lot of Sir Lewis Hamilton fans expected George to come in and wipe Sir Lewis Hamilton's bottom for him, but King George Russell is nothing if not a killer, self-serving, lives and breathes to win races and therefore championships. Sounds like someone, Maximilian Verstappen surely, which is weird that the two of them don't get on. Because to a certain extent, a lesser or greater, they feel like they are mirror images of each other. Both killers, both live and breathe to win races and therefore championships. Put some respect on King George's name. Imminently, therefore, shortly hereafter, Toto, the boy who cried wolf, will give George what he wants, which is, of course, a 2-year contract. Finally, Toto, but he sits between a rock and a hard place in so many different facets. Does George and Toto. George in the first instance because he has Toto as his manager and team principal. Double jeopardy. Whysoever would you do such a thing, George? That will end soon. Shortly after this contract negotiation, Toto finds himself between a rock and a hard place. Why? Because he wants to keep George, but so too he wants to sign desperately, more than anything in the world, a Maximilian Verstappen, a fire-breathing Max Verstappen. I've said it on a gazillion occasions and I make no apologies for labouring this point. Toto, by dint of the way that he talks about Max Verstappen, that dude is worth anywhere between 2 and 3 tenths on the rest of the field. Toto will drop kick in the chest of George Russell if it means that he can get a whiff of the signature of Max Verstappen. I've said it before and I will say it again because it still stands. George Russell fans will say that that's a disrespect on George. Max Verstappen's fans will say, what else do you expect? Speaking of Maximilian Verstappen, he weren't too bad, was he, today, that fella? It'll go well, Max, if he keeps his nose clean. Do you know what I mean? If he can keep his eye on the ball. RB21 was meant to be a gangster vehicle all of a sudden, and they fixed for some things, haven't they? Perpendicular front wingers near us makes no difference. Brand new rearing, brand new floor fairings, and the car looked good for a while there. However, it all depended on the start, and Max Verstappen couldn't hook it up. So dirty is the dirty side of the Singapore track. The run-in down to turn 1, there was nothing doing. They placed all of their eggs in the good start basket, put red-labelled soft compound tires on Maximilian Verstappen, and it didn't work out. McLaren drivers really are, so I will get to them, Sid, I'm telling you. We'll go scorched earth. I don't want to go too soon. I don't want to shoot my load too soon when we're talking about McLaren, because my blood pressure is already far too high. Maximilian Verstappen did everything that he could do today, barring a brilliant start. Had he got the start, then he would have been able to manage it from the front, and potentially there would have been a race win and 25 points. The 25 points that he so badly needs to gap Oscar Piastri in the championship, but there was nothing doing. The dirty side of the track was king. George Russell managed to nail it, and then he gets tapped by Lando and Norris. Max Verstappen said after the race that he didn't even see it. He didn't even know that he'd been tapped. Tongue-in-cheek, any Max Verstappen. You knew that Lando had touched you, but again, it seems like the dude is keen to mend that relationship. He doesn't want to come across as the fire starter in the face of a British-biased F1 accredited media and press. It's techie, this, as far as Max Verstappen. He said after the race that he didn't think that they've been winning enough races to call themselves proper championship contenders. Of course, he's bridged the gap. It was 69 points. Now I think it sits at 63 points between him and OJP. But that's not enough. That's another missed opportunity. Max said that he was struggling with the upshifts that he's been struggling with all season long. And that won't go anywhere. Maybe, again, the thesis, if Maximilian Verstappen was going to win himself a 5th champion, 4, soon to be 5-time champion, the thesis went something like this, didn't it? That he would need to win, and then he would need another entrant to take 2nd, take more points off of the likes of Lando and Oscar. There is that other entrant in George, but he's taking more points off of Max as well. Oh, the humanity. As badly as I want to say to my grandkids that I lived through the Max era when he became 4, soon through 5-time champion, I'm not sure it's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, by dint no longer of McLaren, but because George and Mercedes, the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth, now find themselves en hora buena. If you talk about Max, everybody always says, the naysayers, that he's a fast car merchant, that he can only win races when he's got all of the durable competitive event. How about that? Did you see Sector 2 and the way he was able to hold off a fire-breathing dragon in Lando Norris, who by now had his Weetabix? We'll get to that, I promise you. Legendary settings from Maximilian Verstappen, god-tier levels of racecraft each and every single time. 1.5 seconds is the delta that you need to overtake and stick a move around here. And I would concur that Lando Norris probably had that, but still couldn't get it done on much fresher rubber. That is very Maximilian Verstappen-like, isn't it? Has Lando under manners always, but yet and still. Let me give Lando some praise in the first instance before we go full scorched earth. Lando Norris is a brilliant driver. You can't watch today and say that that dude isn't God-gifted. He's incredible. He's got pace for days. He was the man today that I wanted to see rock up in qualifying and drop it on pole, because rest assured, here's the difficulty. There is a difference between can and will. Execution is something that Lando struggles with. Pressurised circumstance, ditto. He's not that guy to pull it out the fire with any sort of consequence. Of course, you can get a Monaco Grand Prix qualifying, but that's the exception as far as Lando's concerned. That proves the rule. He's not that dude to pull victory out of the fire, rise from the ashes like a phoenix. I just don't think Lando is that guy. As brilliant as he was today, I'm hesitant. I just can't give him the praise, because I'm thinking, where was this dude in qualifying? And then we talk about the incident. Of course, if you're Lando Norris, you're going to pull that move. Show me a gap and I will take it. If you no longer go for a gap as a racing driver, then you are no longer a racing driver. Ayrton Senna settings. And I think that still stands to a greater or lesser extent. However, there was a love tap in the first instance on Maximilian Verstappen's gearbox tick, and then the second instance on the front left of Oscar Piastri's car, to which Oscar said, "What's going on here, lads? What's going on here?" You can forgive Oscar for thinking that something is amiss here, that McLaren have been and are still batting at the Lando Norris crease, that they are overweight as far as their portfolio in Lando Norris PLC. Now, I'm not saying that that's the truth, but you can forgive Oscar and Oscar Piastri fans for thinking as much, lest we forget the British Grand Prix. Again, everybody said that that penalty was unjust. Aggressive on the brakes was Oscar Piastri then, but again, he fell foul at the altar of some fortuitous timing or lack thereof. It was the safety car light, and when it went out, that caught Oscar by surprise. McLaren agreed that that penalty that Oscar got then was egregious. Did they invert then, though? No, they did not. Do you remember a couple of race weekends ago when Oscar nearly pulled one round the outside of Lando and came very close to kissing the back of Lando's gearbox? Straight on the radio was Tom Stollard, race engineer of Oscar, to say, "Listen, mate, that's not papaya rules." Where was that message today for Lando? If we're playing consistent games and the rules of engagement, the same for both Oscar and Lando, then where was that message to Lando? You touched Oscar, be careful. We have papaya rules. Adhere to them, therefore. Where was that message? Easy G, I'm not saying that this is Oscar sabotage. I'm saying that you can forgive Oscar and Oscar fans for now thinking it, because the evidence is stacking up. When you look across, I mean, the pit stop, that happens with McLaren. But Oscar Piastri in the car in real time was like, what's going on here? Oscar Piastri's engineer, Tom Stollard, said, you know what? He had to take avoiding contact. He had to take aversion. Do you know what I mean? He was going to hit Max, and his line, he couldn't take the geometric racing line because he was being flanked by Oscar. Excuses, McLaren, to which Oscar Piastri called ball feathers instantly. And he said, well, if that's his crash averting action, if by doing that he's got to touch his teammate, then that action is rather SH1T. And he didn't say SH1T. And I concur, Oscar Piastri. That's poor from Lando Norris. Again, he's a fire-breathing dragon, and I get it. It wasn't much. It was a love kiss at best, a tap. But nevertheless, if you lose even temporary control of the car and cause an incident, what is that? Why, ladies and gentlemen, and again, this is a non-rhetorical question, why are the FIA giving Lando Norris so many blighs? Why did they extend that fella so much grace? They didn't give that to Lewis Hamilton in 2021. Why are they extending? I think this is it. I think Lando Norris is the poster boy. I think they think that a rising Lando Norris tide floats all F1 boats. Do you know what I mean? He might be the next one after Lewis that attracts all the young girls, the 16 to 35-year-old ones that will go and buy themselves a Lando Norris t-shirt, that will find themselves in the Lando Norris stand at Silverstone. I think the powers that be, Zach Brown and Andrea Stella included in this, want themselves some Lando Norris, acutely aware of what that will do for McLaren as an entity, as a business, its commercial aspect, and so too F1. I think this is techie, chat. I think this is very, very techie, because I think, see the look in Zach Brown's face afterwards. Of course, they're celebrating the Constructors' Championship. It's a fantastic achievement. Only 24 months ago, McLaren were nowhere near. They were at the back of the pack. And for that, they are to be commended. Andrea Stella, the Pep Guardiola of Formula One, included in that props, standing ovation, settings. But yet and still, I think they've gone too far here. And I think they need to extend, by the way, the leader in the Drivers' Championship some grace. Lando tapped Oscar Piastri, and where was the remedial action? No further investigation, full stop. That's not good enough. And I understand why in the heat of the moment, not having seen the incident, Oscar was like, what are you talking about? That was SH1T from Lando Norris. What do you mean? The second that I even get close to Lando, you guys are on the blower to me, telling me about papaya rules of engagement. Don't touch Lando. You'll recall inverter Italy, 5.9 second pit stop. They were keen to right that wrong, weren't they, McLaren? And again, you're right, Easy G. They're not same. This isn't apples and apples. They are not same, but they are very similar. I understand why Oscar Piastri fans all around the world would be looking at that saying, what's going on? And Oscar too in the car. Lest we forget, Oscar very level-headed hitherto season to date. Career to date, Mr. Stoicism, Mr. Mental Fortitude, never gets mad, unflappable as near as makes no difference. In Singapore, he was flapped. He was perturbed. He was fuming. You could hear him when Tom Stollard came over the radio and tried to alert him, this is what we're going to do if indeed there is a safety car. You heard Oscar Piastri say, you know what, do whatever you want to, man. I'm not interested. What are you talking about? Just you go ahead and do whatever you want to do. It's agnostic almost. Past hatred, they say, is indifference. And that's what Oscar Piastri sounded like over the radio. And I can't blame him. Yes, he came out the car and he'd recovered himself. Normal stoicism was resumed from Oscar Piastri. But just like Maximilian Verstappen said yesterday, being hindered and impeded by Lando Norris and dying embers of qualifying, I think Oscar Piastri will not forget, lest we forget. We're racing for a championship now, Oscar Piastri. Lando Norris too is involved in it, as brilliant as Lando was today. Oscar will remember this, and again, he will expect grace and patience and leniency to be extended in equal measure to him. Since why? Well, because he's leading the championship. Now, Lando Norris has gapped the one that they call OJP today. He's closed the gap, but yet and still, egalitarianism, it has to be meritocracy. Zach Brown and Andrea Stella, lest you wish for the F1 world to see Oscar Piastri as a second-class citizen. He will negotiate a move. You've seen how he went on with Alpine. If you want to keep the team together for as long as possible, you need to be a bit more even-handed, some might say, Coyote, in the way that you mete out these decisions. It's going to get techier than techie things over the next couple of months. Oscar Piastri has the whip hand, but he leaves Singapore Grand Prix feeling like a woman scorned. And I would concur. I agree every second of the way, because if I were Oscar Piastri, I would feel like a woman scorned too. Oh, the humanity.